Whoa. Okay, so picture this. I'm sitting here in Hujra Shah Mukim, right? It's kind of a chill place, you know, with that old-timey vibe hanging in the air. Makes you think about all the stuff that's happened around here. All the people who've walked this same
The
dusty
facial
ground.
features and dental
And it
traits of
got me
Ouranopithecus
thinking
suggest it is
way,
an
way
early
back.
hominin.
Like
While the similarities
before
are
there were
striking,
even cities,
African fossil
or even really us like we are now. I'm talking about our super distant relatives, the ones who were more ape than human, swinging through trees and munching on who knows what. And that's where Ouranopithecus comes in. It's a mouthful, I know. Sounds like some kind of ancient superhero or something. But trust me, this guy, or girl, we don't really know for sure, is a big deal when we talk about where we all came from. So, the name Ouranopithecus literally means sky ape in Greek. Pretty cool, huh? You can almost imagine them chilling in the treetops, looking down at the world. But the thing is, they weren't exactly floating around in the sky. They were very much grounded in the forests of Europe during the Miocene epoch. Now, the Miocene, that's a huge chunk of time, stretching from about 23 million to 5.3 million years ago. Think about that for a second. Dinosaurs were long gone, and the world was starting to look a bit more familiar, with mammals and flowering plants really taking over. It was a time of big changes in climate and landscapes, and these changes played a massive role in how creatures like Ouranopithecus evolved. Our story really kicks off with the discovery of some fossil fragments in Greece back in the late 1970s. A team of researchers stumbled upon pieces of a skull and some teeth that looked different. They weren't quite like any other ape fossils they'd seen before. These fragments were found in a place called Macedonia, and as more bits and pieces were unearthed over the years, including parts of the face and even some limb bones, a clearer picture of Ouranopithecus began to emerge. It turned out, this wasn't just another monkey. This was something potentially much closer to the evolutionary line that eventually led to us humans. Now, when scientists find fossils like these, it's like putting together a giant super old jigsaw puzzle with a whole bunch of missing pieces. They have to look at the shape of the bones, the size and wear patterns of the teeth, and compare them to fossils of other ancient apes and, of course, to modern humans and apes. This helps them figure out where Ouranopithecus fits into the grand family tree of primates. And the initial findings were pretty exciting. The structure of the face, especially the broad cheekbones and the shape of the eye sockets, had some similarities to later hominids. That's the group that includes us and our closest extinct relatives. One of the big debates surrounding Ouranopithecus is exactly where it sits on that family tree. Some scientists argue that it's an early member of the hominin lineage, meaning it's on the direct line to humans after we branched off from the chimpanzees. The shape of its face and some dental features are often cited as evidence for this. For example, the thickness of the enamel on its teeth suggests a diet that might have included harder foods, perhaps moving away from a purely fruit-based diet like some other apes. This could be a sign of adaptation to different environments and food sources, which is a key factor in evolutionary change. However, other scientists have a different view. They point to other features of Ouranopithecus, particularly some aspects of its limbs, which seem more adapted for life in the trees. They argue that it might be more closely related to the African apes, gorillas and chimpanzees, or perhaps an earlier branch that didn't directly lead to humans. The problem is, we don't have a complete skeleton of Ouranopithecus. Many of the key bones, especially those from the hands and feet, which could tell us a lot about how it moved around, are still missing. It's like trying to understand how a car works when you're only looking at the front bumper and a couple of headlights. Despite these uncertainties, Ouranopithecus remains a crucial piece of the puzzle in understanding our origins. Its existence in Europe during the Miocene raises some fascinating questions about where the earliest stages of human evolution might have taken place. For a long time, the prevailing view was that Africa was the sole cradle of humanity. But the discovery of hominoid fossils like Ouranopithecus in Europe suggests that the story might be more complex, with potentially significant evolutionary events happening across a wider geographical area. Think about the environment Ouranopithecus lived in. During the Miocene, Europe was a much warmer and more forested place than it is today. There were lush woodlands and savannas, providing a variety of food sources and habitats for different kinds of animals. Ouranopithecus would have shared this landscape with other extinct apes, as well as early forms of many of the mammals we know today. Imagine wandering through those ancient forests with the sounds of strange creatures all around you and maybe catching a glimpse of a sky ape peering down from the branches. It's a pretty wild thought. The study of Ouranopithecus also highlights the importance of paleoanthropology, the study of human evolution through fossils. It's a field that requires a huge amount of patience, meticulous work, and collaboration between scientists from different disciplines. Paleontologists carefully excavate fossils, geologists help to date the rock layers they're found in, and biologists compare the anatomy of these ancient creatures to living ones. Each tiny fragment of bone or tooth can provide valuable clues about the lives and relationships of our ancestors. And it's not just about the bones themselves. Scientists also study the environment in which these fossils are found. They look at the types of plants and animals that lived alongside Ouranopithecus, the climate conditions at the time, and the geological history of the region. All of this information helps to build a more complete picture of the world our ancient relatives inhabited and the challenges they faced. So, as I sit here in this old place in Pakistan, thinking about Ouranopithecus in ancient Greece, it's kind of mind-blowing to realize how far back our roots go and how interconnected we are to this long history of life on Earth. Even though there are still many mysteries surrounding Ouranopithecus and its exact place in our family tree, its discovery has opened up new avenues of research and continues to fuel the ongoing quest to understand where we came from. It's a reminder that our story is still being written, one fossil fragment at a time. And who knows what other amazing discoveries are waiting to be unearthed, right here in places like Ouranopithecus or in some dusty corner of Greece that could further illuminate our ancient past. It makes you wonder what stories the very ground beneath our feet could tell if it could only speak. Pretty cool, huh? So, we left off thinking about this sky ape, Ouranopithecus, chilling in the trees of ancient Greece. It's wild to think about, right? A long, long time ago, Europe wasn't just a place of a bunch of countries we see on a map. It was a giant forest, full of creatures that we can barely imagine now. And in this forest, something big was happening. Not like an explosion or anything, but something a lot more slow and quiet. Evolution. And Ouranopithecus is right in the middle of it. You know how, when you're looking at your own family tree, you can sometimes see a photo of your great-great-grandma and notice that she has your nose or your smile. Scientists do the same thing, but with bones that are millions of years old. They look at the fossils of Ouranopithecus and they see things that make them go, huh, that looks a lot like a human, or a chimpanzee, or something in between. This is where it gets really interesting, because the features on these fossils are like clues in a detective story. One of the biggest clues is the teeth. Ouranopithecus had big molars with thick enamel. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, thin enamel is great for eating soft fruits, which is what a lot of apes do, but thick enamel is better for chewing harder, tougher stuff like nuts, seeds, or maybe even roots. This suggests that the environment was changing. Maybe the juicy, easy-to-grab fruits were getting harder to find, and Ouranopithecus had to adapt to a different diet. This kind of dietary shift is a massive deal in evolution. It can change everything, from the shape of a jaw to the size of a brain. It's one of those key moments where a species is forced to either change or go extinct. Another thing that really stands out is the face. The scientists who first looked at the skull fragments of Ouranopithecus noticed that its face was broader and flatter than many other apes from that time. It had a sort of dish-shaped face with big, wide cheekbones. This is a feature that we see in later hominins, the group that includes us and our closest extinct relatives. It's not an exact match, of course, because Ouranopithecus lived so long ago, but it's a striking similarity. And it makes you wonder, did Ouranopithecus have some kind of special family connection to us? The debate among scientists is a big one. On one side, you have the people who say, look at those teeth, look at that face. Ouranopithecus is a hominin, one of the first ones, and a direct ancestor of humans. They see this ape as a crucial link in the chain that connects us all the way back to the early days of primate evolution. They believe that some of these early hominoids might have left Africa, evolved in Europe, and then either went back to Africa or died out, but not before passing on some of their features to the next generation of our ancestors. On the other side, there are scientists who are more cautious. They say, hold on a minute. It's easy to get excited about a few similar features, but we need more evidence. They point to the fact that we don't have a full skeleton. We don't know for sure how Ouranopithecus walked. Did it spend all its time in the trees? Or did it start to walk on the ground more? The fossils we have of its limbs suggest it was still pretty good at climbing. So they argue that Ouranopithecus might just be a distant cousin, a side branch on the family tree that eventually died out. Maybe it evolved some similar features to humans on its own, through a process called convergent evolution, where two different species develop similar traits because they live in similar environments. This whole back and forth is what makes science so cool. It's not just about one person making a discovery and everyone believing them. It's about a global community of experts digging up fossils, analyzing data, and debating different ideas. Every new fossil they find, every new piece of technology they use to analyze a bone fragment can completely change the story. It's a bit like a huge, ongoing mystery novel, and Ouranopithecus is a key suspect. So let's think about the world Ouranopithecus lived in. This was the late Miocene, around 9 to 10 million years ago. The climate was starting to get cooler and drier. Those lush forests were slowly starting to break up and become more open. This is a huge, huge deal. When the environment changes, animals have to adapt. If the trees are getting farther apart, an ape that's good at swinging from branch to branch might have a harder time. They might have to spend more time on the ground, walking. This shift from a purely arboreal, tree-dwelling lifestyle to a more terrestrial, ground-dwelling one is a major step in the evolution of our ancestors. It's what led to us walking upright on two legs, which is one of the most defining features of being a hominin. While we don't know for sure if Ouranopithecus was a bipedal ape, walking on two legs, its presence in an environment that was becoming more open and savanna-like makes you wonder. Did it take some of those first clumsy steps, out of the trees and onto the ground? We don't have the fossil evidence of its feet or pelvis to say for sure, but the possibility is incredibly exciting. It suggests that this crucial evolutionary shift might not have been a single event in one place, but a process that was happening in different parts of the world, including ancient Europe. The story of Ouranopithecus is important because it challenges the old idea that human evolution happened in a straight line, with every step happening only in Africa. It suggests that there were many different kinds of hominoids spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia, and that the branches of our family tree were much more tangled and complex than we once thought. It's like a big, beautiful, messy tree with lots of branches, some of which are dead ends, and only a few of which lead to us. Ouranopithecus might be one of those branches that got really close to the main trunk, or maybe it's a direct part of the trunk itself. For me, sitting here in Hudra Shah Mukim, thinking about these ancient apes in Greece, it feels like we're all connected by this deep, deep history. The dust of this place and the dust of those ancient sites in Greece are all part of the same planet, the same story of life. The questions that scientists are asking about Ouranopithecus: what did it eat? How did it move? Is it our ancestor or just a relative? Are the same questions we all ask about where we come from, and every fossil they find helps us get a little bit closer to the answer. It's a story that's still unfolding, one bone at a time. It makes you feel like you're a part of something huge, something that's been going on for millions of years. And that's a pretty amazing thought. You know how when you're a kid and you play a game of telephone, the message gets all twisted up by the time it gets to the end? History is a lot like that, but in a good way. The story of our origins isn't a neat, clean line. It's full of twists, turns, and things that are so far-fetched they sound like fiction. Ouranopithecus is one of those twists, a character that totally flips the script on what we thought we knew. So let's talk about the big picture view for a minute. For decades, the mainstream scientific belief was pretty straightforward. Human. Evolution happened in Africa. The theory, often called the out-of-Africa hypothesis, basically says that the earliest ancestors of humans evolved in Africa, and then later on, a group of them migrated out and spread across the rest of the world. It's a solid theory, and there's a ton of evidence to back it up, especially with later hominins like Homo erectus and, of course, our own species, Homo sapiens. But Ouranopithecus, with its flat face and thick enameled teeth found all the way in Greece, throws a massive wrench into that neat little story. This isn't just some random ape fossil. This is a hominoid, a member of the superfamily that includes apes and humans, with features that look suspiciously like an early hominin, and it's from Europe, not Africa. This discovery, and others like it, have led to what's known as the Eurasian hypothesis. It's a much more controversial idea, but it's gaining traction. It suggests that the common ancestor of African apes and humans might have lived in Eurasia, maybe even in places like Greece, and that the lineage leading to humans later migrated back into Africa. Now that's a pretty mind-blowing idea, right? It means that our family's starting point might not have been where we thought it was. It's like finding out your great-grandfather was born in a different country than you always believed. This Eurasian hypothesis isn't saying that all of human evolution happened in Europe, but it's suggesting that the very first split, the one that separated our ancestors from the chimpanzee lineage, could have happened there. After that, this early hominin lineage could have moved back into Africa, where much of the rest of our evolution took place. The discovery of other Eurasian apes like Ouranopithecus, another jaw-dropping discovery from Greece, only adds more fuel to this fire. So how do scientists try to figure this out? Well, they use a whole bunch of different tools, not just a shovel and a brush. One of the coolest things they do is use a technique called molecular clock dating. It's pretty technical, but the basic idea is that they can look at the DNA of living humans and living chimpanzees and see how many genetic differences there are between us. They know that these genetic mutations happen at a relatively steady rate, so by counting the differences, they can estimate how long ago we split from our common ancestor. This molecular clock usually puts that split somewhere between 7 and 9 million years ago. Now guess what? The fossils of Ouranopithecus are dated to around 9.6 million years ago. See the connection? Ouranopithecus lived right around the time. The molecular clock suggests the split between humans and chimps happened. It's a perfect, albeit a bit blurry fit. The timing is one of the strongest arguments for why some scientists believe Ouranopithecus could be a direct ancestor. It's not just a side character in our story, it could be the star of the show's opening act. But let's be real. There are still a lot of pieces missing. For one, the fossil record is incredibly spotty. The chances of an animal dying in a way that its bones get fossilized are super slim. It's like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach after a storm. So, when we find a partial skull or a few teeth, it's a miracle. We don't have a complete skeleton of Ouranopithecus, and without it, we can't say for sure how it walked, how it moved, or how it behaved. The lack of a full skeleton means we have to be super careful about drawing conclusions. Maybe that broad, flat face and those thick teeth are just a coincidence. Maybe they evolved for a reason that has nothing to do with us. But the similarities are hard to ignore. It's like seeing a picture of a guy who looks just like you in an old book and thinking, could he be family? You don't have a birth certificate, but all the clues are pointing in that direction. Another thing to consider is the environment. The late Miocene, when Ouranopithecus was around, was a period of global change. The climate was getting cooler and drier, and those big, lush forests were giving way to more open grasslands. This is a crucial detail because many scientists believe that walking on two legs, bipedalism, evolved as a way to adapt to these new, open environments. A creature that could stand up and see over the tall grasses for predators or carry food more easily would have a huge advantage. We don't know for sure if Ouranopithecus was a biped, but its existence in a changing environment, and the fact that its teeth seemed to show it was eating harder foods that might be found in a less forested area, makes you think. Did the shift in climate in ancient Greece push Ouranopithecus to take those first steps toward a bipedal lifestyle? We can only guess, but it's a fascinating thought experiment. So, for now, Ouranopithecus remains a mystery wrapped in a debate. Is it a direct ancestor of ours, a true founding father of the human lineage? Or is it a close, but ultimately unrelated cousin? The truth is, we don't have enough information to say for certain. But what Ouranopithecus has done for us is invaluable. It has forced us to re-examine our assumptions and to realize that the story of human evolution is not a simple, single-origin tale. It's a grand, multi-continental epic with a cast of characters we're still discovering. Sitting here, thinking about these big questions, I feel like I'm a part of a global conversation that's been going on for millions of years. It's not just about a few bones in a museum case. It's about understanding our place in the world and our connection to all the life that came before us. The story of Ouranopithecus is a testament to the fact that the past is always full of surprises, and the search for our origins is a journey that's far from over. It makes you want to get out there and look for more clues, doesn't it? So I'm sitting here, and my mind is just racing. It's hard to wrap your head around millions of years. It's like trying to count all the stars in the sky. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that the story of Ouranopithecus isn't just about some old bones in a lab. It's about the very nature of discovery and how we build our understanding of the world. It's a detective story that stretches across continents and through time. Let's zoom in on a different part of the mystery. We've talked about the teeth and the face, but what about the rest of the body? What was Ouranopithecus's life actually like? While we don't have a full skeleton, we do have some pieces of its limbs. And these pieces are like whispers from the past, telling us tales of a different kind of life. The limb bones that have been found suggest that Ouranopithecus was a big creature. We're talking probably around the size of a modern chimpanzee, maybe even a little bigger. Its shoulders and arms seem to have been pretty strong, which points to a life that involved a lot of climbing and swinging through trees. So, even if the forests were starting to thin out, Ouranopithecus was still very much a tree dweller. This is a bit of a contradiction to the idea that it was on the direct path to becoming a ground-walking hominin. It's like finding out your star quarterback relative was also a champion gymnast. It doesn't quite fit the picture you had in your head. This is where the debate gets even more complicated. The Eurasian hypothesis I mentioned before, the one that says our earliest ancestors were in Europe, has to grapple with this. If Ouranopithecus was still so adapted to climbing trees, could it really be our ancestor? A key feature of being a hominin is the shift to bipedalism, walking on two legs. Apes are great at climbing, but they're not built for long-distance walking. The structure of their feet, legs, and pelvis is all wrong for it. So maybe Ouranopithecus is more of a close cousin, a relative who had some features that looked like ours, but was ultimately on a different evolutionary path. It's possible that the thick enamel and the flat face were just a coincidence, a case of convergent evolution where two different species develop similar traits because they face similar environmental challenges. The cooling climate and thinning forests in Europe could have forced Ouranopithecus to eat tougher foods, leading to the evolution of thick enamel, just as similar pressures in Africa were pushing our ancestors to do the same. Two different species, facing the same problem, come up with similar solutions. It's a pretty common thing in nature, but here's the thing that still keeps the debate alive: the timing. The fact that Ouranopithecus lived right when the molecular clock says we split from the chimpanzee lineage is a huge deal. It's a bit like a witness placing a suspect at the scene of the crime. Even if the suspect's story is a bit confusing, you can't ignore the fact that they were there. The location and the time are just too perfect to dismiss completely. The story gets even more interesting when you look at what happened after Ouranopithecus. Around 7 million years ago, a massive cooling trend began. The climate got even drier, and the forests in Europe retreated even further. Ouranopithecus and a lot of other Eurasian apes seem to have gone extinct around this time. It was a major wipeout. The environment just got too tough for them. This might explain why we don't see any later hominins in Europe until much, much later, when our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, finally arrived. Meanwhile, back in Africa, the environment was also changing, but in a different way. It was a huge continent, and while some parts were drying out, others were still lush and full of life. This created a kind of evolutionary laboratory, where different species could adapt and evolve in different ways. The oldest undisputed hominin, fossils we have like Sahelanthropus and Auroran, are from Africa and are dated to around 6 to 7 million years ago. These are the fossils that many scientists see as the true first hominins. They show signs of bipedalism, and their teeth and other features align more closely with the path to humanity. So, what does this all mean for Ouranopithecus? It means that it might be a fascinating dead end on our family tree. A brilliant, but ultimately unsuccessful, experiment by nature. A close relative who had some of our features but was too tied to the old ways of life to make the leap to bipedalism and survive the changing world. But even if it's not a direct ancestor, Ouranopithecus is still a hugely important character in our story. It forces us to ask bigger, more interesting questions. It shows us that human evolution wasn't a neat process. It was messy, with multiple species evolving and trying out different strategies. There were many different apes and hominoids out there, some of them with features that look a lot like ours, some of them with features that look nothing like ours. It's a reminder that we are not the inevitable result of a single straight line of evolution, but the lucky survivors of a chaotic, unpredictable process. For me, sitting here in Hujra Shah Muqim, thinking about these ancient bones in a lab, in Greece, it's a humbling thought. We're all just a part of this huge, interconnected story of life. The past isn't a museum you can walk through. It's a living, breathing thing that is constantly being rewritten and reinterpreted. Every new fossil, every new discovery, changes the story just a little bit. And the story of Ouranopithecus is a perfect example of that. It's a reminder that the world is a much bigger and more mysterious place than we could ever imagine, and that our story, the story of how we came to be, is still far from complete. You know, the more you think about this stuff, the more you realize that the past isn't just a bunch of facts. It's like a conversation. A very, very old conversation that scientists are still trying to listen in on. And Ouranopithecus is a creature that seems to have a lot to say, even with just a few bones. Let's imagine for a moment what a day in the life of Ouranopithecus might have been like, based on the clues we have. The climate was changing, right? The big, leafy, tropical forests were starting to thin out. So, imagine a morning in ancient Greece, around 9 million years ago. It's not as hot and steamy as the African jungle. The air is a bit drier, maybe a little cooler. The trees aren't as close together, so a group of Ouranopithecus has to be more careful. They can't just swing from branch to branch forever. They have to come down to the ground more often to get to the next patch of trees. This is where the environment starts to change everything. On the ground, the world is different. It's more open. There are grasslands and patches of savanna. And, on the ground, the food is different. Instead of just soft fruits hanging from branches, there are things like roots, tubers, and tough seeds and nuts. This is where those thick enameled teeth come into play. They're like built-in nutcrackers, perfect for a changing diet. This shift from a purely arboreal or tree-dwelling lifestyle to one that also included spending time on the ground and eating a wider variety of foods is a major turning point in our evolutionary story. It's a huge step toward the kind of adaptability that would eventually define our own species. But it's not just about food. The ground is a dangerous place. Predators like saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and giant wild dogs would have been a constant threat. So, how would Ouranopithecus have survived? Maybe they traveled in groups, like modern chimps, and used their size to intimidate threats. Or maybe they were more cautious, sticking to the edges of the forest where they could quickly retreat back, into the trees. We don't know for sure, but the risks and challenges of life on the ground would have put a lot of pressure on them to evolve new behaviors and even new physical traits. This is the kind of stuff that makes Ouranopithecus so important. It shows us that the process of becoming a hominin wasn't a single, clean event. It was a long, slow process, probably happening in different ways in different places. The challenges faced by Ouranopithecus in Europe, a drying climate and a change in food sources, are very similar to the challenges faced by our ancestors in Africa. This suggests that the evolutionary pressures that led to humanity were not unique to one continent. They were a global phenomenon. So, let's step back from Ouranopithecus for a moment and think about the bigger picture. When we talk about human origins, we often focus on the big, dramatic things. Walking upright, a bigger brain, using tools. But before all that, there were smaller, more subtle changes that set the stage. The change in diet, the shift from thick forest to open savanna, and the new challenges of living on the ground. These are the kinds of things that Ouranopithecus, with its thick teeth and strong climbing arms, embodies. It's a snapshot of a species in transition, caught between two worlds. And that's why the debate about whether it's a direct ancestor or a cousin is so important. If Ouranopithecus is a direct ancestor, it means that these crucial early stages of human evolution happened in Eurasia, and that the lineage later moved back to Africa. If it's a cousin, it means that the evolutionary pressures in Europe and Africa were so similar that they produced two separate but very similar-looking evolutionary experiments. Either way, Ouranopithecus tells us that the story is more complex and interesting than we ever thought. The story of Ouranopithecus is also a reminder of the power of science. It's a story that's been built on the smallest of fragments, a jawbone here, a few teeth there, and a couple of limb bones. It's a testament to the incredible work of paleontologists and scientists who can take these tiny clues and use them to piece together the lives of creatures that lived millions of years ago. They use everything from the microscopic wear on a tooth to the chemical makeup of the soil the bones were found in. It's a slow, painstaking process, but it's how we're starting to understand the full picture of our past. I think the most important thing to take away from Ouranopithecus is that we shouldn't get too comfortable with our explanations. The history of science is full of ideas that were once believed to be true, only to be proven wrong by a new discovery. The out-of-Africa hypothesis is a strong one, but Ouranopithecus reminds us that it might not be the whole story. The real story might be a lot more tangled, with different branches of the family tree popping up in unexpected places. And that's what makes the search for our origins so exciting. It's an ongoing adventure, and we're all a part of it.